Hey everybody, I think we're hanging out. We have a lot of people in this Hangout, and we've got some questions already streaming in. But before we start out, let me just say a couple quick things. One is that we have to stop at 3 o'clock India time, no matter what, because they're going to do another Hangout like the developer relations guys. But I also wanted to just do some very quick introductions. Would you guys be willing to sort of cycle through a little bit and introduce yourself so people know what's going on? Let's start. I'm Matt Cutts. I'm the head of the web spam team. I work with webmasters and SEO. Wiz, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm Michael or Wiz or Michael Wiz or whatever you want to call me. And I work on webmaster outreach, so supporting webmasters, things like reconsideration requests, videos, hangouts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we're both, normally in Mountain View, and here we are in Hyderabad. And it's not just us in Hyderabad. Do you guys from Mountain View want to introduce yourselves?
Start with Brian.
Brian?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Brian White. I'm a program manager in the web spam team in Mountain View. It's really good to be here in India with everybody. So.
Absolutely. Nathan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Nathan, Nate. Search quality, web spam, based out of Mountain View as well, here visiting in India.
Fantastic. Hey, Rob, you want to do a quick hello?
Sure. Hi, I'm Aradhana. I'm also working at the Mountain View office on Webmaster Outreach.
Awesome. So, count it. We have 5 different people from Mountain View visiting India right now. So we're putting a lot of attention into trying to make sure that we handle it really well, that, we provide all the support that we can, but more importantly, we have a great team of people right here in Hyderabad who work on spam fighting and who also work on all kinds of different webmaster outreach. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves a little bit? Malik, you want to go first?
Yeah, so hi, this is Malik here again from Hyderabad team. I work for the search quality team here, and I have with me my team. I'll just show around. Yeah, you see here, yeah. So yeah, we all work for the search quality team in Hyderabad here.
Awesome. Paul, you want to say hello?
Hey guys, this is Paul. I also work with the search quality team working with Webmaster Outreach locally. So you guys can look forward to a lot of support and help from us.
So, Sai?
Hi all, this is Sai. I work in Hyderabad office again in the search quality team.
Very cool. And finally, let's have everybody's boss's boss's boss. Vivek, you want to say hello?
Yeah. Hi guys, I'm Vivek. Again, work with the search quality team here in Hyderabad.
Okay, so we've got, as you can tell, there's a big number of people, both who are local to Hyderabad and do a ton of quality-related work. I was talking with somebody earlier today who's an engineer here, who's worked on enterprise and all kinds of other things. So there's a really big presence. And it's not just in Hyderabad. We have a Gurgaon office, there's Bangalore. I landed in Delhi this weekend and got to see the Taj Mahal and had the best experience, not only because of the architecture and because it was a fantastic site, but even before I got out of the Delhi airport, somebody said hello. They walked up and they said, "Oh, I really like your webmaster videos, and so it's great that you're here in India." And it was such an incredibly warm welcome. And even at the Taj Mahal, somebody walked up and said hello. And that really makes it feel like doing these videos and doing Hangouts and all that sort of stuff is worthwhile because people can benefit from it. So without further ado, let's actually answer some questions. How about that? A few people starting out saying, "Where are you? How are where are you going?" I'm here in Hyderabad for the next several days. I didn't realize Republic Day was going to be a holiday, so officially I'm working on Thursday, but I might go and see a little bit of the sites. And then on Friday I fly back out. I'm going to stop by Korea on the way back home, but it's been fantastic to get to visit with people. Okay, so a very interesting question starts out with Stefan, actually, which doesn't sound like an incredibly Indian name, but he says, "Something special to know for webmasters in India?" So I was trying to think, what's some information that I could share with you guys that maybe not everybody else knows yet. I think, maybe tomorrow morning we might do a blog post that talks about ways that webmasters can standardize their markup on forms so that people can sort of start to make it easy for autocomplete of web browsers and Chrome and all those sorts of things. If you think about it, whenever you start to fill out a form and it completes well, that's fantastic, but everybody uses different names for their fields. And so I think, I'm trying to give you guys a few hours of preview, I believe that we might put out a blog post pretty soon where we've been working with other people and we're trying to come up with a good standard so that if you can mark up with very standard form names, then anybody who comes and wants to fill out that form, they can do autocomplete much faster. They can fill out the form much faster. And that way, it's much easier for people to buy or subscribe or whatever they're interested in. I'm hoping that the Chrome guys don't get angry that I'm dropping a hint a little bit early. Hopefully tomorrow that will roll out, and then by the time everybody in Mountain View, all those Square guys wake up, that blog post will go live and people will be able to learn about it. So a really interesting question from Taraka wants to know, will you include public or private but shared Google Docs and spreadsheets in Search Plus Your World results? So I'm just a search guy. I'm not I'm a web spam guy. I don't have special insight on what the product roadmap looks like for Search Plus Your World, but I can certainly try to give you a little bit of the insight from the outside. And from where I'm standing, it would be incredibly helpful if I could type a search into one search box and be able to find the content no matter where it was. So I personally would find it incredibly useful. Like we've started a public doc where we were talking about some things related to this Hangout. If I could go to just regular Google and search and find that document, I think that would be fantastic. That said, I don't know what our product plans are, and so I have no idea how it might work. You guys might have noticed the privacy policy that we put out just today, which takes over 60 different privacy policies and combines them together into one privacy policy. There's still a few like Google Wallet, maybe Chrome, Google Books that are separate, but to be able to take like tens of thousands of words of privacy policy and sort of condense it down to one more simple, easier to read privacy policy is a good thing. And hopefully that will let you do things like, if there's something really useful, like being able to do, type in the name of a friend and it can do automatically spell correct that because it knows your contacts or something like that. Instead of having these separate silos, I think that would be really, really cool. So I don't know how it will work out in the future, but it would be really nice if they added that sort of functionality, in my personal opinion. Okay. Here's an interesting one. What would cause Google to penalize websites when performing SEO? I had a website that was ranking top 3 for 3 very competitive words, and boom, it started sinking like a rock to page 3. So I might lean back. Anybody else want to tackle that one? Anybody on this one? Brian, Nathan, Paul, anybody want to chime in, or Malik on why something might drop out of the top 1 or 2 or 3 results?
Nobody wants to say it? I can say something.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that could lead to a rankings drop. The first thing that I would do, though, is like open up the Webmaster Guidelines and just use that as a checklist. And I might even skip down to the last section, which is the quality guidelines, and see, is there something that I was doing that maybe some SEO told me to do, or maybe I got some misinformation somewhere, and it turns out that I was doing something like buying links that pass PageRank, for example, that actually violates our guidelines. If you find out that that was the issue, the resolution is actually pretty straightforward. Though, is you first clean up whatever you had done. So if you had hidden text on your page, for example, remove it. Take care of that first, and then we have a process called a reconsideration request, where you just say, hey, please take another look at my site, Google, and we'll reevaluate it. And if we had taken action on the site and you fixed everything, then we can go ahead and change that. But sometimes it's things like crawling issues. Somebody, your web post might be having issues, or maybe you were working on a test version of your site and that was blocked in robots.txt, and you move from the test server to the production server and you forget to, change that. So it could be that as well. We have actually, there's a checklist that you can find in our Help Center. So google.com/webmasters, click on the Help Center, and there's an article called Site Not Doing Well in Search. And if you look at that, it's kind of compiled from over the years of all the different things that we've seen happen to websites. I don't know if anyone has anything to add. But
yeah. So the basic idea is, if something has gone horribly wrong, either because you were spamming or crawl issues or whatever, it's often best to start with google.com/webmasters, because we will usually leave a message there for a large fraction of stuff. So if you show up and you see a message, that'll tell you exactly what's going on. If you have been doing aggressive SEO, if it's really, really bad, egregious black hat SEO, often will remove the site entirely. If it's stuff where the site is lower quality in terms of, like thin affiliates, or not having enough original content, that sort of thing, then that might be the sort of thing that would merit a demotion. And what you can do is try to fix or find out what the original issue was by going to google.com/webmasters. And if you think that you've fixed the issue, you can do a reconsideration request. And when you do a reconsideration request, you will find out explicitly, for the vast majority of cases, whether we've actually taken manual action on your site or not. And if we have taken manual action in the past, whether we're going to reconsider that request or whether we think there's still some work left to be done. So there's a lot of good stuff that you can start out with there. That's kind of the high order bits. I don't want to spend too long on that question, but that's where I'd start whenever I'm diagnosing issues. So Rupesh asks, is Google stepping up its anti-web spam efforts? Well, as you can see here, we've got an awful lot of people in this Hangout who are thinking a lot about spam. In addition to all the engineers back in Mountain View, we actually have spam fighters not only in Hyderabad, but around the world. So in many places where we can almost get 24-hour coverage in terms of being able to respond to spam. It's pretty fun. So you guys who are on the web spam team in Mountain View, how many people are staying past Friday? Okay, so everybody but me. I have to leave on Friday. Nate's actually been here a week before me, and so a lot of people have been here to make sure, like, all we do is live and breathe and think about spam in a lot of cases. So it's definitely the case that we're trying to think about what do we need to do to tackle the next wave of black hat spam, what sort of things we need to do to improve on. Okay, Sandeep asks, a quick question. As a strategy to recover from Panda, after finding posts which we feel are low in quality, should we 1, no follow and no index it, 2, 404 it, or 3, move it to a subdomain? If it were me and you really know that it's lower quality, I would probably go ahead and 404 it, right? If that content is not sufficient to, if you're worried that content is so low quality or so bad that it's starting to affect the entire reputation of your site, there's no harm in just removing it, right? Just remove it entirely, let it 404. The other things are tactics that you can do. You could try to segregate it off to a lower quality domain, but I mean that's still in some sense associated with you, whether it's a subdomain or a domain, depending on what we look at. No follow and no index, you could do that because Google is then not going to have that show up in its index. And so that is one strategy. If you really, if the quality is good enough, you're willing for a person to see it, but you'd really rather not have it be reflected on your site, then you could go with no follow, no index. But it sort of sounds like you're talking about posts which are low enough in quality, either original or auto-generated, where it really might be affecting the entire reputation of the site. And for those, I would probably just go ahead and use the 404.
I guess that last option is maybe better left for cases where instead of known low-quality content, you might have kind of content of unknown quality. So if you have a site with user-generated content, you have an untrusted user account, and you're still waiting for them to, build reputation, maybe, get rated by the other users, or if you have moderators that, take care of spam and abuse, that stuff you might want to keep hidden from search engines. Just while you're kind of feeling them out.
Yeah, and if you have user-generated content and you can't control the quality of it, then segregating it somewhere a little bit different can make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody says don't forget to try the biryani. The chicken has been really, really good. I've been enjoying that. The food has been delicious in India. My wife had a bad experience in college, and so we never get to go have Indian food because she thinks she doesn't like Indian, but I think she secretly does like Indian. She just had one bad meal. So I've been having so much Indian food here. It's been really, really good, and I appreciate the team hosting me and taking us out to a bunch of great places.
Yeah, it's been a nice surprise for me too, because I pretty much never have Indian food back home. The last time I had Indian food was when I first moved out to California, like over 5 years ago. Went to one restaurant in California. It was kind of okay, but I just was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But I guess I didn't have the the full authentic experience.
Yeah.
But I actually had a home cooked meal, my first meal here. So it's been kind of that level ever since.
Yeah. So not to tell any tales, is it okay if I tell where you're from?
Yeah.
So Wiz is from Philadelphia. So that's the land of Philly cheesesteaks and hoagies and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes he's a little conservative with what he eats. So this has been a real teachable, growing moment for all of us, I think.
That's right.
Okay, Akshay asks, is 100% recovery from Google Panda Update possible? If yes, what you suggest? And the answer is yes. It is possible to recover 100% from Panda. Oh, hey, Pachi's showing up. And we have echo on. Okay, so it is possible to recover from Panda in the following ways. Remember, Panda is 100% algorithmic. There's nothing, manual involved in that, and we haven't made any manual exceptions. And the Panda algorithm, we tend to run it every so often. It's not like it runs every day. It's one of these things where you might run it once a month or something like that. Typically, you're going to refresh the data for it, and at the same time, you might pull in new signals, and those signals might be able to say, this is a higher quality site. So there's a really a solid group of engineers that I have the chance to work with who have been looking for signals that differentiate the higher quality sites from the sites that might be slightly lower quality. And if you look at, even in the last, say, 2 or 3 months, we've done a better job about differentiating on those. And so when we rerun the pipeline to recompute the data, and then we push that back out, I think the most recent one was earlier this month. There was one that was probably about 2 weeks ago. And so when that happens, if according to our signals it looks like your site is higher quality, or there's new data, or there's new signals, then you would sort of pop out of being affected, and you wouldn't have to worry about it at all. So in order to recover from Panda, take a fresh look and basically ask yourself, how compelling is my site? We're looking for high quality. We're looking for something where you land on it and you're really happy, the sort of thing where you want to tell your friends about it, you want to come back to it, you want to bookmark it. It's just incredibly useful. That's the sort of thing that we don't want to be affected by Panda. So yes, it is possible to recover. All right. Oh, we have a question about the thing that we just rolled out last week. So Mustafa asks, my question is, why Google penalized for showing more above-the-fold area ads, and Google itself shows more above-the-fold area ads in its search queries? This is a completely fair question. I've seen a few people ask it, and I felt bad because I was on a plane, like a 14-hour plane ride whenever the blog post went live, so I didn't have a chance to address it until now. So here's the situation. If you do a search like, say, credit cards or web hosting, something that has a lot of ads, it is true that you can see, several ads on Google. But the fact is, the vast majority of searches do not show 4 ads or a ton of above-the-fold ads. In fact, if you looked at the overall fraction of Google queries that trigger ads, it's not as large as you would think. So the change that we do is algorithmic. So this is the page layout algorithm. Basically, well, boy, I wish I could. Okay, you have a page, right? And if we're going low tech, by the way. So if you land on that page and there's a lot of ad blocks, right, 2 very large ad blocks, whether it be AdSense or whatever else, the algorithm does not have a hard-coded list of ad networks or anything like that, and we algorithmically detect these ads. So, and we don't do anything special, so we detect AdSense just like we detect a lot of ads. So if you show up on a site and a large fraction of the content above the fold has these sort of large ad blocks, then that's a bad experience. But what we do is we compute, this is incredibly low tech, but it's kind of fun. We basically take the amount that's above the fold and we say, okay, how much of this looks like it's ads? But we don't just do it on a single page. we aggregate it across the entire site for all of the pages that we have in our index. So if your template is nothing but like ads as far as the eye can see until the user scrolls really far down on every single page, then the page layout algorithm is likely to trigger. Now, every so often you'll see a page like this on Google, but your typical page on Google does not have those sorts of ads, or they have a very small number of ads. They might have ads on the right-hand side, but they don't have a ton up on the top. So if you were to process Google and aggregate across all of Google's pages, you'd find, on average, we have very few ads above the fold. And the ads there are relatively small. Now what's interesting is Google actually blocks Google search results from crawling because we don't want to pollute Bing, we don't want to pollute Bleco and other search engines. So in the first place, yes, we would apply the same processing, but in aggregate, Google doesn't have that many above the fold ads if you look at the mix of ads that we have. In addition, we block ourselves from being crawled, so we're not even processing those pages. Now the last question that I've heard a few people ask about is basically, well, of the pages that you do crawl from Google, do you still run the same algorithm on that? And the answer is yes. So there's one Google property, which is, I think, answers.google.com, which is something that got shut down like years and years and years ago. And that property is affected. So we run the exact same algorithm on all the pages that we've crawled. It's not like we do anything different for Google. So Mustafa, thanks very much for asking that question, because I did want to clarify that. You can see a screenshot that says, oh, here's a lot of ads. But remember, most people aren't doing searches for credit cards. Most people are doing searches for everyday things. They're searching for information on error pages. They're trying to figure out how to set the default printer on Firefox and Ubuntu. And those are not those are not queries that trigger a lot of ads. So yes, we are running the same sort of processing. Someone asks what he calls the eternal question: is there a limit on the character count on page titles? Does Google stop reading after a particular number of words? In the early days, we might have had those kinds of, hard-coded limits, but we try to be more sophisticated over time. For example, suppose your page title is nothing but capital letters. That's going to take up more space than if you have lowercase or if you have numbers. And so what we try to do is we try to actually compute the amount of screen real estate. And you don't want to go too far, because then it would start to look raggedy or go all the way over to the edge of the page. So we try to be relatively sophisticated. So what I would recommend is, think about the overall appearance in terms of the actual characters and how wide they are, and you can do some iteration and you can figure out how much Google will typically trim, and then you can incorporate that into your calculations.
Yeah. I just watch out for like extremely long titles that are getting cut off. I would think about titles more in terms of appearance than trying to get those keywords in there. For ranking purposes, because showing up in the search results is one thing, but then the very next step that you want is you want that click, right? You want that conversion. And if you have a title that is maybe just a bunch of comma-separated words, it might look a little unprofessional. Someone can just kind of gloss over that and go to the next result, or maybe the important bit of your title. Is the part that gets truncated, right? And so, you probably would want to have, your business name in every title, and then kind of the specific page, right? Whether it's a product name or a contact us or something like that. And we offer in Webmaster Tools, there's HTML suggestions, which will tell you if you have, duplicate titles or titles that are too long. So that can kind of help you focus your efforts, especially if you have a large number of pages. And I'd even look at queries where maybe you're getting a lot of impressions, but relatively low click-through, and see which pages are ranking there, and look at that title and also look at the snippet or even the URL, and say, okay, what kind of threw that person off that they wouldn't want to click on my site?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so let's do a question from Siva, who asks, how do you take copyrighted content in Google search? Do you take down sites on request, or do you identify it yourself and remove it? Great question, Siva. So on the website, typically, let me start with YouTube. With YouTube, content publishers will actually give us content and say, we own the copyright to this, if someone uploads the same music video or something like that, then they can choose whether to take it down, whether to show ads on it and pay the money to them, all sorts of different things, whether to let them upload. And so for YouTube, we have this system. It's called Content ID, and it lets people register their content and then decide what to do if someone uploads the same content later. On web search, there's a couple ways we approach it. The first is if we get a DMCA complaint. That stands for Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And that basically says, okay, if I have a blog post and Wiz scrapes it or Brian scrapes it or whoever, and they put up a copy, I can do a DMCA complaint and I can try to get that taken down. And that will almost always succeed unless there's something like a he said, she said, we can't really tell what's going on, or you didn't do a valid complaint. But that's the normal process to take care of it. We also, of course, try to figure out, when you first see a blog post, where was it most likely to show up? You'd like the original content creator to show up if possible. But it can be really hard if two copies show up at the same time to know exactly who wrote what. And so we've experimented with all kinds of different ways to try to do better on that. In fact, there's an entire team in Zurich which has been working really hard on an engineering side to try to return, the highest quality content so that if a scraper or a duplicate site shows up, that it doesn't outrank the other site. And they've made really good progress on that. There's actually a metric site in Russia that shows Google doing, going up quite a bit in terms of recent performance. So that's been going relatively well. We're going to keep working on doing things better on our side of things to return original content. But at the same time, you might want to, if you see someone scraping your site, go ahead and do a DMCA request, a Digital Millennium Copyright Act request. Okay, here's a fun one. I think we can get benefit from no-follow links on SEO. Does anybody else want to tackle whether no-follow links have any benefit whatsoever, page rank or anchor text or anything? Does anybody on this Hangout want to claim that no-follow links actually flow page rank?
No.
No. Paul's willing to wade into it. Okay, no, it does not flow page rank. So, every like 3 years we'll find a bug where it accidentally in one really weird corner case did flow PageRank, and we'll take care of that. But no, in general, we do not want to discover new links, and we don't want to flow anchor text across nofollow links. And the reason for that is that nofollow is very useful for user-generated sites or sites where you've got blog comments, things where you can't vouch for them, so people can click on the links, but search engines don't necessarily trust those links. So I can't speak for Yahoo, I can't speak for Microsoft, but I can speak for Google. And Google's crawl does not use nofollow links to flow PageRank or anchor text. And if you ever see a case where it even looks like that's not true, send me a tweet and let me know, and we'll dig into it and debug it, and if it's a bug, we'll fix it. Okay. This one's a good one from Vidar. He wants to know, rich snippets is manually enabled if I don't understood things correctly. Incorrect! It used to be the case that that was how things worked, but in actuality, just a few weeks ago, we turned it on so that rich snippets can turn on for any site. So it doesn't have to be the case now that someone has to say, okay, this validates and we're going to turn this on. Now, what that leads to is there's been a few reports on a few blogs about people trying to abuse, rich snippets or try to make like extra lines show up in their snippet with like star reviews and stuff like that. And that's kind of a known problem where if you open it up to everybody, you'll see a few people who try to abuse it. And we'll absolutely look into those cases, and we'll probably have a forum where anybody can report that abuse. So if you are thinking about trying to abuse rich snippets, I would really not recommend doing that because you could lose your ability to use rich snippets, for quite a long time. And it could eventually be viewed as web spam as well. So all your competitors would see that. They'd be able to report you. So before you start to even think about trying to abuse that as a tactic, I would pull back because it is something where we'll be gathering feedback if we see anybody, trying to use that in a spammy or a malicious way.
I just learned something.
Yeah, absolutely. The SEO value for the author tag. So we do have an authorship proposal that basically lets you prove to Google that you wrote some particular content. And in some cases, we're willing to show you a picture, show the users a picture of the author. And so that can be useful because that means it's a little bit more trusted content in the sense that whenever you see the author, you know that they really wrote it. We've seen a few people pretending to be Matt Cutts online and leaving fake Matt Cutts comments. And so if we can close the loop where you know that a blog post was really written by Matt Cutts, that can totally make a big difference in terms of knowing that it's a little bit more, that it's not written by a spammer or something along those lines. Now, as far as how that might help your rankings, that's still unclear, so we'll have to see how it goes. But I think people have been very happy with the idea of having more authorship on the web. So if we can move away from a nameless, faceless web to a web in which I can trust a review because Wiz wrote it, or I can trust a review because, Cy wrote it, that's something that would be fantastic. And I think that trend will continue. But as far as direct impact on the rankings, it's a little too early to say about that. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Google says it wants content above the fold. And there are blogs using huge images, and below those images is the content. Is Google able to understand that? So it was people on my team who worked on the page layout algorithm, and they've worked very hard to make it precise. So I believe they will be able to differentiate between just static, large images that are on your site versus something that's really going to obscure the content and annoy users, ads or something along those lines. So they go on to ask, there's many different theories as to the number of ads on a page and how many ads on a single page is a good number. And also, what is a good number of above the fold ads? And here's my rough answer. Ask regular people about whether they'd get annoyed, right? Because all of our thresholds are based on the idea of, is this going to be something where a user lands on the page and they're angry, or they're unhappy, or they're annoyed, or they're dissatisfied? So for example, if you're using 2 of the largest possible blocks of ads and they're directly above the content and you have to scroll down to even find the content, that's clearly something that's going to annoy users, right? Whereas if you've got a relatively thin and it's maybe only a single ad, that's the sort of thing where it's probably not going to get in users' ways nearly as much, and so it might not be as much of an impediment. So the other thing is people are talking about the number of ads, and the way that I would think about it is literally more in terms of surface area, like how much of the screen is obscured and how annoying is it. So, this would be annoying, right, if you had this much. Now, you could say, well, that's only 1 ad over here, or you could say that's 2 ads. I tried to make like that. You could say that's 4 ads, or you could say you could make it 16 ads. But it doesn't matter the number of ads. It really matters how much space there is and whether people can get to the content. And so that's what we're doing. We're actually looking at the document object model. We're parsing the page. We're trying to render it basically and figure out how it would look to a real user. And so at PubCon, I did a quick preview. I said we're going to get better at page understanding, user understanding, document understanding. And what I meant with document and page understanding was that we would really understand the layout of documents. Where are the ads? How big are the ads? How much is the content there? Is the content buried way far on one side, or is it front and center? Those kinds of things. And so that's the essence of how the algorithm works. Those are the sorts of things that we look at. All right, somebody is commenting in Spanish. That is, that's a surprise to me. That one's too long. So let me tackle the second half of that, because I think how many questions are we getting at this point? Oh wow, we only have 22 minutes? Yes. Okay, we have 22 minutes and we have 79 comments. So I'm going to start marching a little bit faster. So I'll take the Cyrillic person's name and I'll answer the second one about Google sanctions. Can sanctions be canceled during conversations with Google support and fixing site problems like usability problems, content problems, and so on? So Wiz alluded to this in the beginning, but basically there is an appeals process. So if we've taken manual action, you can do an appeal. It's called a reconsideration request. And the result of that is we will actually tell you whether your reconsideration request has been granted, or whether we never took action on your site, or whether there's still some violations of our guidelines. And so normally if there's a manual action taken on your site, it lasts for a certain amount of time. So hidden text might last for 30 days, for example, whereas something that's really, really bad might last for a much longer period of time. And after that period of time, things would automatically expire, and then at that point, you'd come back in Google search results, and then if you're still spamming, the theory is that we'll find you again pretty quickly. But you can absolutely appeal at any point, and if you were victimized by a bad SEO, or if you made a mistake and you've corrected it now, and you can promise, here's how we can assure you that it won't happen again, then you absolutely can have that manual action revoked. And so that's the whole point of the appeals process, and things can happen pretty well with that. Yeah, that can work pretty well. All right. How will things change for SEOs after March 1st? So they're talking about the policy change on the privacy policy. I really don't think that I don't think for SEOs their world will change much. The whole idea that we had over 70 different privacy policies, that was pretty excessive. And so I think it'll be good to bring it down to one that people might actually be able to read the whole thing and have it understand all the different parts of it, and not have to try to read 70 if they're using 70 different products. But for SEOs, I don't think that much will change. The hope is eventually our user experience, we might be able to unify it a little bit, make it a little bit more streamless, a little smoother, that sort of thing. But that's relatively far removed from SEO. And so I don't think SEO will change that much as a result of the privacy policy changes or the terms of service policies. Okay, so somebody asks, is the Panda update now a sort of automated process? Like if we are adjusting and making changes to our site and it starts showing the effect dynamically, or is it the traditional one where you guys trigger an update every now and then? That's a great question. So it's not the kind of thing, there are some parts of our processing where when we crawl a page, we will reprocess that page, like keyword stuffing. And if you've taken off the keyword stuffing and we don't think the keyword, that page is spam anymore, then it can instantly pop back up. The Panda update involves more offline processing. So it takes more time. There's a pipeline of data and all these programs that have to run. And so we don't run it every day. It runs typically more like, at this point, once every month, once every several weeks. And so a person does kick that off by hand. We look at the data. We make sure that it meets our standards. Everything looks okay. And then if everything looks good, then we push that data out. So the data itself is automated. It's not a group of people at Google saying, I like this site and I don't like that site. But the actual process of generating it is done still by a person. Eventually it might be automated and just be incorporated into our indexing. But at least for right now, it's the sort of thing where the Panda update, an engineer kicks that off and sort of makes sure that the pipeline is operating smoothly. Okay. Somebody asks, in what scenarios a site link of a website would be shown without a description? Is it a sign of an update in the rankings of a website, or is it a bug? Anybody else want to take a stab at that? Why would either a site link or a snippet be empty?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can think of one case would be, if we were actually unable to crawl the page, then we might not have a snippet, especially if we can't, find it from some other source. Because, typically the snippet will come from the content on your page, whether it's something that we automatically grabbed or it was in your meta description. But robots.txt, for example, could be what had blocked us from crawling the page. And so robots.txt says Googlebot or any robot or whoever you specify, don't crawl this page. But we still might want to show a certain page in our search results if it's the best result for that answer, even if somebody has maybe kind of shot themselves in the foot by blocking us from crawling it. And I think you had mentioned a few examples in the past where that had happened with.
Yeah, the California Department of Motor Vehicles blocked all crawling by Google. And eBay at one point blocked every search engine from crawling it. eBay was like, why would I want traffic from search engines? That's crazy. And so yet if someone typed in eBay, it looks a little silly if we can't even return a link to ebay.com. So normally if you don't see a description, if you don't see a snippet at all for your result, it's typically because we can't crawl your site. So check your robots.txt, make sure you're not blocking us. The next thing is in google.com/webmasters, we have a free tool called Fetch as Googlebot. And there are some people who try to do the right thing and then end up cloaking for Googlebot and block Googlebot and not regular people. So they're like reverse cloaking and shooting themselves in the foot. And so if you can dig into that and make sure that you can actually fetch the page as Googlebot, that will let you know for sure that you're not blocking. It can also happen that your site was down or something like that.
And one other thing, there is a kind of more obscure meta tag for no snippet, where you can actually request no snippet. So, maybe you had a template or something that had something in the head of the file that you didn't realize had something like no snippet on it.
Yep. Yep.
Also,
Okay, here's an interesting question. Can we use alphanumeric keywords in titles? So like India to mail. And the answer is yes. We'll just treat it all as one word, India to mail. So that actually brings up a point that happened earlier this week that I haven't heard anybody talk about that much, which is you can now search for some punctuation in Google. So it used to be that we'd have a few keywords like C++ or F# or just a few programming languages, that sort of thing, where you could search for punctuation. But we've recently turned on for almost everything that you can type on the keyboard without maybe hitting Shift and more than 5 or 6 weird characters. So like the %, the @ sign, a bunch of these single characters you can now search for as actual search results. And then over time, you could maybe imagine being able to search for punctuation plus some words, so like Matt Cutts or something along those lines. But starting with the single characters is the first place to go. So you can absolutely use alphanumeric keywords in the title and things along those lines. Oh, so many questions. This is great. Clearly, I need to come to India more often and do more Hangouts with people. So, yeah, this one's kind of interesting. Does Panda affect content with the original versus SERP? So Panda, it really tries to figure out whether the site is high quality. It doesn't try to necessarily figure out the aspects of duplicate content versus original content. In practice, if you're a high-quality site, you'll tend to have original content. But it's not so much just looking directly for duplicate content in Panda. Okay. Wow, so many good questions. Okay. Oh, people are also asking on Twitter. Okay. People are using plugins to tag search terms people are landing through. Is that okay, or is that keyword stuffing? I have to admit, I am not a huge fan of tags. You can do a few, like categories and things along those lines. But at the point where people start to say, these were the last 50 searches that people did, or try these 100 tags, it absolutely can start to go overboard. And so we do have a keyword stuffing detector, and we do have a URL-based spam detector that looks at how spammy the words look to us. And so if you have too many tags, if your tag cloud is excessive and has things like repetition or every single variant of a word, those kinds of things, then it can trigger our spam processing, and then we don't think that the page is as good. So you do want to be a little bit more careful about that. Anytime you're throwing a lot of words on the page and it's automatically generated, that can be a little bit tricky. Somebody asks about a specific site, which is normally we don't like to get into specific sites, but somebody asks about connect.in.com, and they say that it's dynamically built around thin content and trend keywords like hot trends. It's safe to say I've been talking to members of my team about that site. In fact, over lunch, just a couple hours ago, we were talking about that. My recommendation is not to generate content automatically based on things like hot trends, small numbers of original content, and lots of auto-generated or scraped or automatically generated stuff. So I won't get into too much detail about any specific site, but I would not recommend that people use that as their basis to try to target SEO traffic. And at the point where I can look around and I'm hearing complaints from lots of different places, even if it's a high-profile site, if a lot of what is happening on the particular subdomain is taking just a lot of hot trends or what people are typing and then sort of very quickly building up very thin content or even automatically generated content, then I wouldn't recommend doing that. Let's leave it at that, if that sounds okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one, or should we keep moving on to different questions?
About 10 minutes after that one.
Okay. We'll keep moving on. So the nice thing is, I'll just tell you a very quick story. We had a computer that we were doing YouTube live streaming. So this is our very first Google Hangout. We have not done like Google Hangout on air. We were just getting all the computers hooked up to do this today, and I've never done one before. And it turns out it's easy and it's fun. And I promise we'll try to look for ways where we can have more people participate, and we can have more kind of discussion. We wanted to start out and show just the sheer number of people we had visiting Hyderabad, already in Hyderabad, working on quality and spam. But the interesting thing is we built a computer for doing YouTube sort of live streaming. And should we tell this story?
Yeah.
Okay.
I tell it all the time. So.
Okay. So, and then somebody sent an email and they said, we want to do a hangout between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. Because Desmond Tutu was turning 80 years old. And they said, we really need some computers, and your computer, this Mac that you guys have got set up, is like the only computer that we know can do this YouTube live streaming. Can we borrow this computer and ship it either to like South Africa or wherever the Dalai Lama was? And we're like, of course, this is really good karma for the computer, right? This is a fantastic thing. So we absolutely agreed. And they did the hangout. If you search for Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, you can find the news stories, and one of these computers was one half of that conversation. And then they started to ship it back. And the computer got stuck in customs. So customs has been hanging on to this good karma computer like literally for months. And so we just got it back a few weeks ago, and it's still in pieces, so we haven't like gotten all of the YouTube stuff all reassembled. And it is in Mountain View, so we couldn't use it that way anyway. But it's really funny because I'd done a Q&A, and I'd said, oh, we're going to do more of these. And then we sent the computer off, and it got used in the live hangout, and then it got stuck in customs. And so, but this is kind of fun. I think if we could do more of these more often, everybody would be happier. So, all right. Is Search Plus Your World from Google making SEO's work really tough or easy? I think an SEO's job has always been to make compelling, great, fantastic content, the sort of content that people want to share. And that's the sort of thing that works well with social media. If you're a really interesting person, people will want to follow you. And if people are following you, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus or wherever, you'll have a better chance of getting an audience. So Search Plus Your World just makes it easier for people to search over stuff that they've already seen, not just on web search, but things that have been shared with them. And so if you're the kind of person that makes fantastic content that will get shared with a lot of people, then that can absolutely benefit. Social search and all those kinds of things can help you quite a bit. So the idea remains the same. Try to make original, compelling content, the sort of things that people would want to share. There's this great guy, Matt Inman, Oatmeal, who was actually an SEO. He was at SEO Moz, and he decided he wanted to be a web cartoonist, right? And all the time, I see people sharing his cartoons, and I'm like, he used to be an SEO. I go digging around. Are there any paid links at the bottom of the page or anything like that? And the fact is, he just makes these fantastic cartoons that people really enjoy that get swapped around all over the place. And so if you can find an area, a topic, a niche, however you want to say it, where you can really do well and really have a lot of people be interested in what you have to say, then anytime you have social search of any kind, that's going to help amplify your audience and lead to more people being interested in it. Okay, so let's keep going. Oh my goodness, so many questions. Okay, someone is literally asking about like a math question. Like if I have 4 links in a web page, and that page has PR10, and that page has 10 links, how much juice will I get? Will I get 1 point or 4 points? It would be good if you can clear this up. Do multiple links from one page to another count? That's a really good question. I forget exactly whether if you have 2 links from the same page, whether they count. I better not speak out of turn. I'll have to go back and look that back up. In general, if you have a certain amount of page rank and you have, say, 4 links, some of that page rank would typically dissipate, and then the other 4 would get the page rank that's divided between them equally. Now, over time, we get smarter and smarter, and we try to figure out better ways of doing PageRank besides the original PageRank that was published. And so, in my experience, we have gotten much better about that. I don't remember exactly, given one page with 2 links, how that gets divided.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to watch the video right now, but I think Matt actually answered that question on one of our videos.
Woohoo!
So go ahead and google.com/webmasters, click on the YouTube channel, and if you click on uploads, you can search.
Mm-hmm.
And I just typed in multiple links, and it was the first thing that showed up.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
just kind of a plug for the YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do a search for Webmaster Video Channel, that's what I normally do a search for. You can subscribe there. And, you know, I tweet about the videos when they come out, but if you subscribe, then you'll always be the first to know when there's a new Webmaster video. And we usually try to make sure that it's not just duplicate, you know, answer the same question twice. So we try to answer all sorts of different things, and there's something like 400 videos there. So that's a really good place to start out. Okay, a great question. Somebody wants to know, how does Google define SEO? Okay, and I'll avoid the cheap answer. It's, you know, it's not just search engine optimization. The way that I think about it is search engine optimization is almost like you're a coach, right? Like you're going to go in and you're going to interview. So I'm going to, you know, interview with Wiz, and I'm going to be like, you should hire me for a job because I'm awesome. I will do that job so good that you will love me and you will give me lots of money and I'll be professional. I'll be really professional. Yeah, I'll be fantastic, right? If I were to do that in an interview, you'd be like, this guy is on crack. He's crazy. Like, there's no way I'm going to interview him.
Don't call us, we'll call you.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have your resume on file. If an opening, you know, comes open that has, you know, with your specific skill set, we'll let you know. And the fact is, you might be the most qualified person for the job, but the way that you're coming across could be too much of a hard sell, or it could be too much of a soft sell, or it just might not be the appropriate way of talking to somebody. So a good SEO, in my opinion, is just like a good coach. They see what you have to say, and then they help guide you about better ways to say it. And so it's not just thinking about search engines, it's thinking about conversions. It's thinking about how do I make a site that resonates with people so that they do what you would like them to do, whether it be buy a product or sign up for a newsletter or whatever it is you're interested in. So a good SEO is like that. In my opinion, a bad SEO is like someone who encourages you to lie on your resume. Someone who says, yeah, say that you can do these things even if you can't, because first you just get the job and then maybe you can learn on the job or something like that. That's like saying, yeah, I've got cartoons, and then when you land on the site you actually have porn, right? So SEOs can be fantastic in terms of being these coaches, in terms of being these guides. In an ideal world, you know, people wouldn't need to know how to interview for jobs. They wouldn't need coaching. But the fact is, we'll always need people who need a little bit of help, who want to be engineers and who don't want to think about how to write a resume or things along those lines. So I think there will always be a role for people to play that kind of role and say, okay, I'll be your coach. I'll help you understand. You know, when a visitor types something in, here are the words that he's interested in finding out about. So that's how I define it. Oh, man. So many good questions. This always happens, by the way. When we crawl the web, there are always more links to be explored and always more pages that we'd like to crawl, and at some point we have to stop. Okay, so
about 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay. I hopefully we'll have a chance to follow back to some of these DMCA. Like, someone's asking a really complicated one about DMCA, and I'm like, I don't even have enough time to read this in 2 minutes, let alone answer it. You know, in general, we try to make sure that we return original content. So if you're getting multiple complaints about DMCA on your domain, that can often be a bad sign. So you might want to look into that. Will I be available later? I'll try to be available later. In theory, we're recording this. If all works out well, we might be able to post it later on YouTube or something along those lines. Now that I've done a Hangout and I've seen that it's not that scary and it can work out pretty well, and taking questions on Google Plus is a pretty good way to do it. Hopefully we'll do more. We don't even need like a special computer to do it that's like a $5,000 Mac. We're actually, you can't quite see it. We're actually running this Hangout. You can see the tip of it off of a Mac Mini. So, you know, you don't need a super powerful computer to do a Google Plus Hangout. And I'll just close out with, hope you have a pleasant day. Which would you suggest to a blogger? 1 post daily of 300 words or 2 posts in a week of 800 words? You know, that's a really good question, because on one hand, it's better to take your time and write something really compelling that people will link to. But on the other hand, I have noticed with blogs, if you're able to deliver something every day consistently, then people are more likely to come and visit. So whenever I don't blog quite as much these days because I feel like I've said most of what I need to say, and I can say, oh, go back to this one post. But I have noticed that whenever I would do like 3 or 4 blog posts in a day, boom, traffic would start to go up because people would start to remember to start checking every day. So it's a really difficult challenge. Do you post every day of a smaller amount, or do you post a couple times a week with a larger amount? In an ideal world, you'd post every day, but even if you post every day, try to make it insightful. I talked to a guy, Mike Masnick at TechDirt, and a lot of people follow TechMeme, which is this great site to show tech headlines, and they just rehash whatever the content of the day is. Like, if I go to TechMeme right now, there's a story about Apple's earnings, and Apple had a fantastic quarter. But do you really need to be the 47th guy that writes about Apple's fantastic earnings? Probably not, right? And even if you can make a little bit of money that way, you'll probably establish a better reputation. And that's what this guy, Mike Masnick at TechDirt said. He basically said, I don't chase the headlines. I sit and I think and I wait until I have something useful or insightful or original to say. And once I have an original angle, some way of coming at it differently than the other 47 people, that's when I blog. And so that would probably be my advice, is try to do it every day if you can, but if you can't come up with something insightful or interesting or useful, then hold off until you can. Okay, so I don't want to hold all of the people on the Hangout hostage, so I think we'd better go ahead and call it a day now so that the developer relations guys or whoever is going to be doing the Hangout next can go ahead and have this room. But I've had a fantastic experience so far in India. We've had a group of people that has done an amazing job of working on spam and different types of search quality in Hyderabad for literally years, and I feel really bad that it's taken me until now to get to India. The nice thing is I can go back, and all 5 of us who are in the office right now can go back and tell everybody else who works in search quality and who works in web spam, it's a fantastic office. You really need to visit. The food is great. The people are incredibly nice. So I can go back and strong-arm some of my engineers to make sure that they show up more often. So thank you very much to everybody who's been extremely hospitable, and hopefully I'll write a blog post or some sort of report about the kinds of things that I learned, at least do a Google Plus post. But it's been really fun hanging out, and hope to look forward to future Hangouts. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care.
See you, man.
See you.